Welcome back, everyone. This is The Changelog. We're a member-supported blog and podcast that covers what's fresh and what's new in open source. You can check out the blog at thechangelog.com and our past shows at 5by5.tv/changelog. The show is hosted by myself, Adam Stacoviak, and Andrew Thorp. So, Andrew, in your echoey way, say hello.
Hello, coming straight from my new, empty, and echoey office.
Yeah, you just moved, right? To Nashville. Got your house. That's awesome.
Music
stuff.
City, USA.
Speaking of music, you can tune in live every Tuesday. That's today at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on 5by5 to listen to this show. This is episode number 94, and we're joined today by the awesome Hampton Catlin. And he's the inventor, as you say, Hampton, of Sass and Haml, which I think is a really cool way to talk about how you created some software. And you're also the maker of Wikipedia Mobile, which you talk about quite a bit in different talks. And I think it's a unique story you have there, too. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's awesome to be here.
So I think I've personally been waiting to have you on the show since like episode number 2. So the episode number 2 of the Changelog was Nathan and Chris. We talked about Sass, Compass, and stuff like that. And I've been a user of Sass for years and stuff like that. We got a chance to hang out at LessConf, and that was awesome. I think I didn't have a different opinion of you before then, but I definitely liked you a lot better afterwards. I don't know why. So don't take anything hard from that. But I guess for the uninitiated on who you are, I kind of said you were the inventor, creator of Sass and Haml and some other stuff. But when you introduce yourself, how do you introduce yourself?
Yeah, usually I say, hi, I'm Hampton, but I don't normally, I'm on the media, I'm like, hi, I'm Hampton. I'm the inventor.
Don't you say,
of Sass.
hi, I'm the Hampton?
I'm the Hampton, yeah.
The Hampton, yeah.
So,
TM.
Yeah, definitely that moniker is a difficult one, because Nathan and Chris have been maintaining Nathan's been involved pretty much since day one, and Chris has been involved for, I think, 5 years now, and they do all the hard work on keeping Sass awesome and adding all the amazing features, and, so I did the first version, the first commit's mine, the kind of concept was mine, the pre-compiler idea, that was actually, there wasn't really anything like that. Like, it's pretty common now with, CoffeeScript and a bunch of kind of other alternatives. But, that was the really crazy idea. Because I think back then I was doing Rails full time. And, people were asking a lot, like, how do I do dynamic CSS? They really want to do, theming, or a user picks a color for some reason. Like, that kind of customizing CSS. And I remember when I first started Sass, that's what people thought it was for the longest time. They were like, oh, well, so let me do custom themes for my users. I'm like, yeah, it's not dynamic. It's actually compiled, and then, it's just CSS that goes up. And it was like variables and some other basic stuff and nesting. But, all the crazy stuff that's out there now, that's, Nathan and Chris are just absolutely insanely awesome at that stuff. And I have to be honest, the most advanced usage of Sass these days, I'm not very good at it. I mostly use, the book I wrote on it, The Pragmatic Guide to Sass, the end of that book's basically the end of what I use day to day in the language. So
I haven't got a chance to dive deep into that book, but I've been wanting to pick it up for a while. But now that you mention it's pretty basic, I might just skip it.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's true. No, it's definitely.
I'm just messing with you.
Well, we kind of did it because the story that I keep hearing from people is I'm at this company, I really want them to use Sass, but I can't convince anybody to take a look at it.
Right.
And so the idea was just to have a really thin, really simple book that just taught you very quickly how to kind of be dangerous with Sass.
So how many pages is it then?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
I guess it's digital, right? So is there really pages?
No, there's.
Is it physical?
I got the book right here. Yeah, it's Pragmatic Programmers. Let me see, 90, I think 100 pages.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's
sizable enough.
Yeah, it's a pragmatic guide, so it's really quick and kind of each page is like an example, and that's really how it teaches you.
I like the way you did that book, too. You kind of had it in this beta form, and you were releasing, I think, chapter every couple weeks, right? And it was pretty neat to kind of go that route, too. And you didn't take that long to write it either. It was a fairly quick one. I know there's another book out there that's taken a while, and there's... there's actually that's a deep topic there.
Oh, sorry. Well, there's about 4 or 5 books. There's actually one in French, which is...
Oh, is there really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my favorite one. It's by...
Not that I'm wild by French books, but just didn't realize that there was a French Sass book.
Yeah, and Ben Frayne just came out with one, I think, also. So, but yeah, Nathan and Chris have one they've been working on for a while, so we'll see how that comes out.
I feel like there's, so what I wanted to do with this conversation, and, Andrew, you're a full stack kind of guy too, so you definitely play in this world as well, but I kind of want to just cover, I guess, not the entire time talk about Sass, but I wanted to talk about a lot about it, I guess, but not the entire time, about that and Haml too. I think it's really neat just how you, you use the word. I think now you changed it. You say creator now. I just realized that, but for a while there you were saying inventor of, which I always thought was kind of neat.
Well, I think I stick mostly with inventor. I don't know. Probably it's just hard, right? Like, yeah, I always flip back and forth.
I don't know if it's. I mean, I think when I've talked to you about it, you're always pretty humble. Like we had a chance to chat at LessConf, and that was pretty cool to just riff about Sass and some neat stuff. And there's some parallels to some feelings we have about the community and what can be done, and some likes and dislikes and stuff like that. Nothing in particular, but just in general, we have some parallels. But I think what's neat about Sass is that people don't realize how old it is, really. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the newcomers, maybe the last 1 to 2 years, maybe 3 years, I've started to use it and have adopted it. But this is like 6.5 years old now, maybe 7 years old now.
Yeah,
right?
I think November is going to be the 7th birthday of Sass, the first commit.
Right. That brings up the other thing. It was I think it was like November 5th. I looked up the commit date in the Haml gem because it was mixed with Haml at first, right?
Yeah, it was. It was kind of a side crazy idea I had to and I convinced Nathan to help me build it as like an add-on kind of thing. It's definitely eclipsed Haml generally. But yeah, and actually on November 5th, so the company I'm at now, Moovweb, we're actually going to throw a Sass birthday party here in San Francisco, and so we're going to invite the community who want to come. So that's actually going to be pretty fun, I think. Well,
I'm the owner of SassDay.com, right? So we'll have to use that.
That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. It'll be Sass Day, not a Sass birthday. It'll be a birthday, but it'll be Sass Day.
Yeah,
it'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, actually, when Haml was a year old, I think, before we started on Sass, maybe a year and a half. So that's almost coming up on 8 years, I think.
So the reason why I bring up the longevity there is that a while back, I haven't done the talk in a while, but for a bit there, 2 years straight, Win and I, we started this podcast a while ago, and we were doing this talk called Design Eye for the Dev Guy and Gal. So all you ladies out there, we were saying gal. You can go back on the slides. It's really neat the way we put the little slash there and gal. But one thing we were seeing in one of the slides when we were doing this talk, it was actually kind of training more than it was a talk. It was 8 hours of training. And we did this, and it was like, the primer into design theory and Sass and Compass and HTML5 and CSS3 and a bunch of other fun stuff. But one thing I was really reminding people of was that, you mentioned getting people to adopt it, and that was part of the reason why you had said what you said in your book and keeping it short and kind of making it, this beginner's guide, for lack of better terms. Was one thing that was hard to convince people of was that Sass wasn't new. It wasn't like it was, they just heard about it, but this thing has been there for a while, so it's a mature project with some mature people behind it that really have some very insightful thoughts, and there should be no reason why you shouldn't trust it, And that's why I kind of harp on the 6.5, almost 7 years old. So,
yeah, it's definitely less being done in JavaScript. Less being the kind of competitor. It came out, it's relatively young, and it being in JavaScript, when they did that port, it kind of exploded in popularity because it hit right when JavaScript frameworks were kind of exploding, and it's like, whoa, this is in JavaScript too. My whole world's in JavaScript, man.
Right.
And but I like it when I hear people say, "Oh, so Sass is like it's like kind of like Less, right? Like you kind of copied what Less did."
No,
I'm like, "Oi!" Yeah,
that's where you put your inventor hat on, right?
Yeah. No, but so yeah, I definitely talk about the age too because I think most people don't know how old it is. I mean, it lived for a long time. It was only used in the Rails community. Right. It was part of a Haml project. Haml is definitely a markup language that you either love or hate or love to hate. I always try to tell this people if I meet you at a conference, I don't want to hear what you think about Haml. Let's talk about anything else. I just don't need to know your opinion.
Are there a lot of negative opinions about Haml?
Yes, it's just always a whole talk that I have like three times a conference.
Are you going to be upset if I have some questions around Haml then?
No, because we have a whole audience of people who I can address all at once about it.
That's right. Get them all done at once, right?
Yeah, or shoot me an email if you have questions. No, I actually, the part that's funny is that people think I'm really sensitive about it. Like, I'm not. Like, but they kind of come up to me like, oh, you know, I hate to tell you, I really don't like Haml. And I'm like, okay, thanks. All right.
I'm super sad.
No, I'm just like,
you've ruined my day.
That's cool. You know. And then somebody's like, somebody tweeted the other day, they were like, I have to admit, sometimes I still use ERB templates for some things. And I'm like, so do I. Like, what? This isn't a big deal. It's fine.
I have a confession. I actually, I'm working on a Rails project, just learning Ruby and stuff like that, and getting more in depth at it. And I actually stopped. I've always been a big fan of Haml, and so I hope I don't make you cry when I say this, but I've gone back to ERB.
How dare you?
How dare I?
He just got finished telling us how sensitive he is about Haml.
I'm gonna cry. No, it's funny. So, you know, a lot of times when the stuff I work on, like I definitely tend to originate things and then let smarter people than me come in if they get traction, and more responsible people than me also. But you know, I'm always looking for those ideas that are kind of really challenging. I definitely like. I have a lot of opinions that don't necessarily always match what's popular. As a matter of fact, some of my opinions will be based around disliking what's really popular. I had a really popular video that went around at some point about me just ripping into test-driven development. And like, you know, and that kind of, I like that it kind of offends people and makes them have to take their position. And like Haml is definitely, if the people out there listening haven't seen it, it's very stark. It's very concise. It's a way to write HTML templates that's very heavy on semantic HTML. So it's kind of designed to be a pain to not write good classes for things. When it was, you know, it was designed in, you know, what was it, 2004 or something like that, 2005. And, you know, that's when, you know, the other developers I was working with weren't using classes, and they was getting to our design team, and they were getting very frustrated because there were all these spans and divs randomly kind of on a template and an ERB template, and they weren't styled right, and it just kind of looked all crazy, and, you know, they just dumped data out. And I kind of wanted to design the language to kind of force people to do good habits for semantic HTML, and to really focus on structure and layout. But, like, it's definitely not meant to be, like, a beginner tool. And as a matter of fact, when I first presented it, I thought everyone was just going to hate it. It was a total Hail Mary to give that out to the world. I kind of just thought I was going to be the only one who ever used it. So the fact it is still used that you've been using it up till now is pretty amazing. But I was just kind of hoping it would stir a bunch of other innovation. And, I mean, it took a while, but there's definitely a lot of kind of things that have taken similar approaches, being kind of white space sensitive, you know, kind of minimum, like now it's like data attributes, trying to make that more concise, more simple. So I'm proud that kind of happened. That, you know, there's Slim and stuff, I think, are now kind of gaining traction, and that's awesome. That's totally the natural flow of technology. I'm just happy to come in with my crazy idea and, you know, push people to question what they were doing before.
I think it's cool though, man, to have just a crazy idea, and that's why I thought it was kind of neat. Like, for a while there, I was like, inventor, huh? And then I was like, oh, inventor. Oh, that makes sense. I mean, because software is an art, and it's not just propeller head kind of stuff. It's very much a canvas, and that is a pretty wild thing. Like, even if it's not the most artistic code, I mean, what it does is really unique, and it shifted a lot for people. And I would even say that Haml and Sass, I'm not sure if they're exactly responsible for, but they definitely started a movement of pre-compiling and this meta level on top of something else. So Sass on top of CSS and Haml on top of HTML. I mean, I think it started this little movement, so to speak.
I mean, I hope it, like, that is the angle. Like, if I'm most proud of myself for something, it is that there are competitors, and, like, seeing CoffeeScript. Like, I kind of had proposed a thing called Jabble years ago at a conference, and I never really got to finish of the project, but it was kind of like a CoffeeScript-like thing, to like make just really straightforward event-driven JavaScript. It was, it was different, but it was kind of applying the same principle.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I had any positive effect in any of that stuff, that's awesome, because CoffeeScript's really, really cool. I think Inventor is kind of the way I think of myself, to be honest. But just because, like, I like to look at problems and I like to try to come up with solutions that other people haven't thought of, that later when you look back, you're like, well, that's obvious. That's my favorite. Like, that's my main joy in life, it is now that, like, I feel like people do look at Sass and go, well, okay, yeah, I mean, that must have existed. Like, somebody did that.
Right.
Those are my favorite products, too, is when you're like, wait, this doesn't exist? Oh.
Well, people are pretty diehard fans, too, of both of these things that we're talking about, Sass and Haml. Like, those who love Haml really love Haml, and those who love Sass, like, really love Sass. In fact, a couple years back, me and John Long and a couple others got together and started this, I guess, blog, on Sass called The Sass Way. And it was a riff on the Ruby way and the Rails way, and so they kind of set the track in terms of the name. But we thought, like, there's some positive, graceful arrogance when it comes to the Sass way, in quotes, Yeah. Because I think there's the way you would write it in CSS, and that's kind of stupid in a sense, because why would you waste so much time, handcrafting that CSS whenever you can let Sass do the indentation for you and make your output beautiful, or condense it, and to decompress or compress it down, or whatever your flavor might be. Sass could help you do that. So there was this level of arrogance when it came to, like, to this. I guess just using this. So I mean, how do you feel about people being so diehardly appreciative and just stoked about using Sass or Haml, like almost fighting to the tooth and nail about it sometimes?
I mean, clearly great. It's pretty awesome. I am looking for, I haven't seen my first Sass tattoo yet, but I'm sure somebody will get one day. Yeah. No, I mean, it's really, really cool to see people be so passionate. And I think the iconoclastic kind of elements, especially earlier on, I mean, these days, especially Sass, it's just more accepted. I think there's less, bare knuckle fights required. Here in the Valley, like LinkedIn's used. I mean, that's why Chris Epstein recently got a job at LinkedIn. They're kind of officially supporting Sass. Sorry, I know Yelp is using it. A lot of the big companies here they'll kind of silently think they're the only ones doing it and are now internally using it. So I mean, and that's just so cool to me. There's like kind of these secret companies right now that are all using it internally, not really telling anyone. And I mean, I think because they're initially challenging ideas, that's why people take it on as a belief, and that's why they get so passionate about it, because they don't understand why other people don't understand. And that's, I don't know, I think it's really cool.
So there's tons of stuff we could talk about, but I'm really curious about this, and I've heard you talk about it elsewhere, but Sass and Haml were both kind of iconified, I guess, in a sense, by this imagery that came with it. You got the dude with the muscles, right? You got the girl with the phone in her hand, and especially when we did the Sass with her, like, people new to Sass are like, why is your icon a girl talking on the phone? And we're like, and why is it, this pinkish purple? What's the tones, and why are all these choices made? Why did you make these choices? And I'm like, well, I'm just following the groove, I didn't choose the girl. I mean, she's sassy though, right? And then you got the dude who's Haml. He's kind of got this, he's got his little muscles out there, and he's flexing. So what's the deal with the images? Where'd they come from?
So it definitely started with the kid. I had a photo that I found at a yard sale of this. It was like a 1950s kid, and he's on his patio, like his porch, and he's probably like 8 years old, and he's got his dad's boxing gloves on, and they're oversized, and he's kind of like trying to pose at the camera like he's fighting. And that was one of my... I just loved that picture. I bought it immediately. I still have it. Because I just love this idea of kind of innocence and having a weird idea and like standing up for something and kind of, I don't know. I just thought it was really adorable. And I don't know. I felt like there was a lot of me in that picture. And so I was working with Lucas Draya, who's a designer. Color.me, I think is the name of his design firm in Toronto. And he helped on the original design of the Haml site. And he had like a bunch of kind of open source, or not open source, public domain images. And that was one of them. And I was like, oh, that's what I wanted. That's the same spirit in that kid that I saw in the other photo. And I think actually when I look at them, the core thing is being mischievous. That's the idea to me. Like that's the heart of that kid. He's kind of showing off, but it's kind of like a cheeky, mischievous way. And then I don't know. I picked the woman's photo of her on the phone. I've been asked this question a lot, and I just really liked the photo. I mean, it looked a little mischievous. I thought she looked cheeky. I thought it was kind of fun. I thought I didn't want to, with a name like Sass, I thought it would be kind of interesting to, I don't know, like play with gender roles maybe. I definitely know some people have been offended by it. I'm a pretty strong feminist. I know guys can kind of be feminist. Yeah, so it's so funny to me when I hear people say, "Oh, it's offensive to me," and that's definitely not the intention. The new design doesn't have that. It's not meant to kind of offend anyone. But I just kind of thought like she seemed empowered to me. She seemed like she kind of had a secret, like there was something mischievous going on. She seemed kind of happy and friendly too at the same time, and that's kind of what I thought about Sass itself. And as far as the color, I believe actually Nathan picked.
Yeah.
He just took the Haml site and then like picked a color and threw it on top of the photo that I sent him. So I don't really know why I went with that color. I don't really like that color, to be honest. It kind of drives me crazy. But that's why the never-ending Sass redesign is going on.
Yeah, so when is that what does that look like for the Sass redesign? Because the Haml, I don't ever see the boy anymore on Haml.
No,
it's gone.
Slingshot now, so.
Yeah, that got redone.
So what about Sass? When's that gonna
I
drop?
can send out the link. I mean, the main thing is, Bermond Painter and Gina Bolton have been working really hard on it, and basically they did all this work to kind of flesh it out, and I think it basically, as all kind of open source design projects happens, people get distracted, and I think the initial version, they were trying to do a lot more tutorials, a lot more kind of interactive information share. Like they were trying to make it not just a better design, but better content is kind of a central place to go to learn about Sass. And I think it's that content part that was the biggest struggle to actually get all that written and put in there. A couple weekends ago, actually, my husband Michael and I spent like a weekend, and we kind of went through, and since we did the Sass book, and we're also working on material. We're working with Treehouse right now, actually, to put together a Sass module for that. And so we're like, okay, fine, we'll come in and help with some of the content. So hopefully soon. I've been bugging Gina about it. We'll see. I mean, honestly, I think as it is right now, not completely polished, it's still better than the current site, which we just need to kill. That's kind of my position. And once you get something up there, it's easier to iterate. It forces you because people are looking at it. But I think there's a lot of pressure because the site's been so ugly and the competitors have all had really nice websites that you kind of don't want to put up something that isn't just clearly better. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, all this wait and all this time, we said we'd finally make it. Okay, now we've done it. Oh.
Yeah, the pressure's there to, like, really deliver now, right? Like, you can't...
Yeah, you can't half-ass it, basically.
You can't put up your draft number one and be like, yeah, we're going to iterate.
Yeah. I mean, it's still looking good, though, and I think anything better is better. So that's open source. Right?
Can we talk a little bit about the, I guess, maybe... I wasn't trying to cut you off. Did you have more to say? I thought you were done.
No,
sorry.
Go.
I just wanted to kind of paint a little bit of the history for those who haven't been closely watching. I know you originally started both of these projects we've been talking about, Haml and Sass. You kind of stepped away for a bit, and then you came back. We talked a little bit about this, not last week, but the week before. We had Phil LaPierre from Thoughtbot on. He's the maker of bourbon, maintainer of bourbon, that's kind kind of, I'm not really sure if you would consider it a Compass competitor. It's just more of like a parallel to Compass, just in pure Sass. But we talked a little bit about just how you stepped away for a bit and came back. So, and it sounds like you're a bit more involved in the day-to-day of Sass now. Is that right?
So the primary Sass project, that is the kind of Ruby engine and the new language features. Today, that's definitely still Nathan and Chris primarily. Nathan he's at Google and he gets his 20% time to work on that. And, I mean, there's basically so many years of sweat equity in that, and they know so many of the edge cases that, like, and I'm not a super, super advanced Sass user, I mean, I try to pitch in on stuff in the forum, but, when they're talking about super edge case things, I'm like, you guys this stuff way better than me. But what I've kind of been trying to do, so, I mean, I left and basically have been, I did a bunch of iPhone apps that got pretty successful. And I did the Wikipedia mobile site. I ran that for 3 years. And kind of was just doing random projects on my own and, focusing on my career and stuff. And, they were doing such a good job with it. I just kind of, was the wayward father. But about a year, I think it's over a year at this point now. Yeah, maybe a year and a half. So the company I work at, Moovweb, we're a software tool company, and there we have a whole framework for developing mobile sites, and it's really a way to transform websites. So imagine CSS Zen Garden, but where you can actually change the HTML too, and you can do this on any site on the internet. So you can like redesign Hacker News and mobilize it or change it to something else or make it ugly. As one of the guys I work with just made a really ugly version. So we have this tool set, and part of our tool set, because it's a framework, there's like, you generate a project. So we have Sass in it, and basically having Sass, we had to include Ruby, and our core framework is no longer written in Ruby. So Ruby's like a 200 megabyte or 300 megabyte download now. So we had this distribution where, and our cloud servers too, where we had this $300 executable, 300 megabyte executable. It's free, actually. And just kind of for compiling these Sass files. And it was slow. We had some really big projects. And when we were using Compass, it could take up to 30 to 40 seconds to compile. And so we kind of, I kind of decided that we had a guy in-house who wrote the parser for Tritium, which is the language that Moovweb has. And we decided to do the totally insane idea of writing a C and C++ implementation of Sass. To basically take those 7 years of development, of edge cases, of features, and try to have one person redevelop it. So Moovweb's been sponsoring that for the last year and a half. And every build of our SDK and product has had it embedded for the last year. But so basically that's called libsass, and that's the actual C and C++ code. It's designed to be super ridiculously modular. Higher picture, when you look at pre-compiled CSS languages, Sass is still, most people use the Ruby version, and most people don't use Ruby. So, for instance, at LinkedIn, they have, a whole set of compilers and computers just meant for building Sass. Actually, Jonathan Lambert, there's this guy who one of his main jobs is to keep their compilation farm running of Ruby servers. And it's like this whole infrastructure just because it's kind of slow and in Ruby. And so that's definitely a downside that people have to do this extra install. Especially, and get on the command line and stuff. And there's apps to help with this, but it's hard to have a real development team. We can't just bundle this into Eclipse, right? So they use Java there. They can't just add this quick thing. So, and Les had decided to do JavaScript, which is a great idea because basically every browser can compile Les now. You don't really have to install anything. You can just do it in the browser. So kind of, I realized, hey, we have to do better than that. Like, how do you go past that? And that's by writing a library that has no dependencies that you can just drop into anything and compile it, and it would have Sass in it. So it's a collection of like 20 C and C++ files. It compiles into something very small. you could drop it right into Firefox today and build Firefox, and it will compile in there. It doesn't need any dependencies. It doesn't use any weirdness. We wrote our own parser from scratch to make sure that's possible. So the idea is, what's better than JavaScript? Well, let's try C. That's the libsass project. When you actually look in, this is where it gets confusing to people. When you go to hcatlin/libsass on GitHub, it's just some C files. It's not an executable. It can't actually do anything. It's a library itself. And that's where you see Aaron Leung, who's the guy from Moovweb, who's been working on this. That's where he puts all of his time reworking that stuff, coding it, expanding it, fixing bugs. And it's meant to be compiled into something else. So there's the other repositories called Sass, and it's basically just a lightweight wrapper that's an executable. So you can actually type Sass when you install that on your command line, and hey, input-output file. Just like it's very similar to the Ruby Sass executable that most people use, and they're using a different framework. And then we also have there's Node Sass, which compiles into a Node server. So check, we've even got JavaScript.
Nice.
So yeah, Andrew Nesbitt works on that. And it's basically, he just pulls in the libsass repo, puts the wrapper around it to make it execute within and compile within Node environment. And then, hey, there you go, npm module. So that's out. There's a Ruby one I've kind of been working on. It's very complicated, and I don't have much free time to work on it. But the goal of that is eventually that it'd be a drop-in replacement, so that you could go into your Rails app, comment out, import Sass, and say import Sass, and then it would kind of alias itself in and be able to compile Sass files, and you wouldn't really know the difference. And so there's still more work to do on that, especially to get full Compass support. Because Compass is not just a Sass library that includes a bunch of Sass files. It also includes a lot of Ruby functions that kind of extend core Sass functionality. And as today, libsass fully supports Bourbon because Bourbon doesn't do anything crazy. Compass, Chris is definitely part of his job at LinkedIn is going to be to help get Compass running on libsass. So at this point, there's actually kind of 3 companies: Moovweb, LinkedIn, and Google, who are all kind of supporting Sass development, like with actual office hours. And in Moovweb, it's pretty much a full-time person. So that's pretty cool. And at LinkedIn, it's a full-time person.
So you have kind of these 2 divergent paths at this point, right? Like the original Sass path and this new one that you're kind of, trailblazing with. What is the long-term plan for how these 2 would will these 2 both continue on indefinitely? And if so, how? Or if not, how is the community of developers that are working on Sass with Nathan and those guys handling the thought of potentially that not continuing, or any thought into that at all?
So at the moment, it's definitely Ruby Sass is going to continue to be the spec implementation, and they're going to continue to develop the language there. And then the goal with libsass is to stay. Honestly, at this point, Sass development, when it comes to features, is pretty slow. Rightfully so. It's 7 years old. When I know when Nathan and Chris, if you see in a comment in any of their pull requests, when they're debating whether or not to add a language feature, is an extremely intense and detailed and long debate, going up to 9 months worth of debate sometimes. Sometimes somebody said something 3 years ago, and then it's been still debating, and they're kind of saying, maybe probably no in that case. But they take a long time to consider new language features. So I'm actually not too afraid about keeping the 2 projects in sync. If I think I have to look at this. I think there's basically a Sass release every 9 months on average. I think something like that. It might be a little longer even. And having 9 months. Our software product, this is really important to it. I have a full-time person. We can totally do it. There's no plans to get rid of the Ruby version. Nathan and Chris are going to continue to work on that. Chris is definitely helping out with libsass. Nathan is just sticking with the Ruby implementation. As far as the future, I don't know. But one thing that's really kind of important to me that I'm trying, if you look in the Sass repo, That's hcatlin/sassc. That's with a C, sorry, SASS, and then the letter C. It's hilarious, right? Sassc. There's a big test suite in there, and it's basically I copied all the tests are in Ruby for the Sass repo, the main one. They're actually in a Ruby class file. There aren't like executables, so it'd be impossible for us to run the tests quickly in a different implementation. So I basically pulled those out into files. We have all these input-output kind of examples. The goal is we're going to continue. It'll eventually move out of that repo. We just have it there because it's a quick place to test. But, the real goal is to have a whole test suite so that, if somebody wanted to write a pure Java implementation, they'd really be able to, know that they're behaving correctly and according to the spec. So that's a kind of ongoing bit of work. And I know that kind of Nathan and Chris are definitely up for helping with that. And we'll eventually kind of unify everything.
When Sass revs or gains new features, what does it look like to keep the two in sync? When you say that, like, can you give us an example for those who don't code in C and don't know what you're doing with this, but what it takes to keep those two in sync?
It takes Aaron Lung. Because, the C and C++ code is very intense, and hand coding a parser is very intense also. Definitely libsass is more of a traditional parser than the Sass implementation. The Ruby implementation. But yeah, basically, you end up having to add a feature like keywords to the parser, if we're going to match on a new media query or a new, behavior to extends. You basically write the test function. We all agree on what the input-output should be, and then you go into that actual parser and try to modify the parsing function or the output function to work with it.
So it's pretty hand-holdy. It seems like it's very hands-on. It's not import the new library and call new bindings or something like that. And it seems like it's pretty.
Well, our goal. So we would, if a new feature gets added, actually we might, if we see it coming out soon in a Sass release, we'd probably already be developing it, and then we'd probably just synchronously release a libsass update, and then all the the adapters that use it, like Node Sass or whatever, would then go out with the release, and hopefully we're going to synchronize the version numbers on everybody. So if you're using Node and you look at your npm package, you'll see it's 3.4, and you can know that that's Sass 3.4 compatible library. So that's basically the idea.
One thing, I don't know if you may have already said this, but with Node Sass, and I think it's Andrew Nesbitt. I've actually spoken with him before, but with Node Sass, and they're kind of coming from the other side, right? So as things go into Sass, you have to kind of keep up with libsass and keep that in sync. Have you spoken to Andrew about his experience with implementing Node Sass? Because I'm assuming that he's probably the first, other than Sass-C, to actually implement a wrapper for the bindings. Have you actually heard about his experience or anything?
We've talked a little bit. At this point with libsass, there's definitely a lot. It's usable today. If you have a very large, very complicated project that was in pure Sass, there might still be a couple incompatibilities. Right now, actually, we're finalizing a new release. I was kind of hoping to be able to announce it on here, but it looks like it's going to be a couple more days.
Bummer.
There's a ton of fixes coming out to kind of edge case stuff. So, I haven't really talked to him. The API is super simple, though. What you actually have to implement, the kind of base stuff. We have, at Moovweb, we use Go as our primary programming language. So, there's actually a thing called Go Sass, and so we keep that up. So, that is implemented into our framework, and kind of you can call Go functions to compile Sass. I think there's a version of web.go, which is one of the libraries that supports it kind of natively. We've kind of been in touch. I know he kind of did as a weekend project, and then I think he was looking to pass the project on. But no, I haven't heard. Wait, have you heard something more specific?
No. I was just wondering what you were saying, what you thought. But as you said that, I looked at what I think is the Go Sass library under Moovweb's GitHub, and You're not lying, man. That's a pretty simple API to wrap around. So the whole thing is like 100 lines of code.
Yeah, there's the header file has like 6 functions. There's like compile a folder, compile a single file, and then compile a string that you pass to it. And then, an options object or something. But our goal is to make the simplest, stupidest way to integrate. Where it gets harder is callbacks. That's a thing we've been, Sass now in the Ruby version allows you to define functions in Ruby. And, it kind of creates, you get past this, Sass : integer, Sass : string, color. And you can manually work with these kind of things in Ruby land. The long-term goal, and this is if somebody wants to make a super good adapter, you can actually kind of map the C objects into, Ruby objects or Go objects. Right now there's this kind of simple C-focused callback library where you can register custom functions, and that's how we're probably going to get initial Compass support. Just actually go code it in C. Why not? So, there's that aspect. But, yeah, so, that's when it gets more complicated. But, if you actually, if you're in Java and you're like, I just want to compile some stuff, or I want to write my own command line app, it's super, super, super simple.
Somebody asked in that somebody is Scott Cullum. He asked about, I guess it kind of becomes a tongue twister too, so I'll preface it a little bit with the fact that there's 2 syntaxes for Sass, and I know that that's its own freaking debate, and I don't even want to go there, but sometimes you just have to. But so there's the newer version, which is more CSS-like, which is SCSS. I'm not sure if other people have a different name or how to say it, but I just say SCSS. And then you have the kind of classic style, right, which is Sass, and that the file types are .sass for those listening and .scss for SCSS. But when you did this, since we're talking about libsass and the ins and outs of that and GoSass and all that good stuff, but I'm not familiar with the details around this. But the question he asked was, Haml is a simplified syntax, and so is Sass syntax. And he's wondering why you decided not to support the .sass syntax, SASS.
So, well, first of all, I hate the name SCSS very, very much.
So you're only supporting the Sass syntax, not SCSS?
No. I hate the name in all caps, SCSS.
Oh, okay.
So the initial conversations on Sass, we were going to make it more like CSS. Kind of after testing the idea with people I knew, like when we were kind of brainstorming, like early, before we actually started building it, most of them were Haml users, and so since it was kind of part of Haml, they were definitely, people were like, no, it should look like Haml, keep it simple, I want to have Haml in my CSS. So we kind of, our initial idea was that we were going to try to support, semicolons, brackets, and white space. And then kind of Nathan came back, shook his head and was like, no way are we going to be able to support that. So at the time we kind of chose to go with a more Haml-like syntax. And that's what, kind of is the .sass format. Then, we and definitely...
That's like white space aware. It's all space indented.
No...
to nest, a property or a rule set, you're going to nest it underneath the previous one. So just to make that clear for those listening, it's not very visual.
Well, and actually the thing people don't know. So Haml's designed that there's the first character on any line is the control character, and it basically defines what's going to happen on that line. And the idea is that you can read along the edge of the file when it's white space sensitive and kind of know what's going to happen. So that's why, equals space, my variable. The idea is I can kind of look at it, and on the left-hand side, as a developer, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to print something out. So actually, the original version of Sass, it was colon attribute space 20, or colon width space 20 pixels, because it was trying to steal that concept that actually saying colon means I'm an attribute, starting with a control character. And basically, over the years, we heard more and more that having a jarringly different syntax confused people, especially people who were not Ruby programmers, but were really more CSS developers. They were used to looking at CSS all day, and when you saw a different syntax, there was a lot more mental switching and learning required. To understand what Sass was. So, at the time, if I was a developer at a company and I said, hey guys, I heard about this new Sass thing, I'm going to convert our project. Then what you would do is, especially the very first version, the file would look drastically different than it did before. And all the other developers in the company would be like, hey, whoa, what is this thing? What did you just do? So over time, it became very, very clear that we had kind of, in my opinion, made the wrong decision on make it more Haml-like. And then, Les definitely took the CSS-like approach. And, it dawned on us like, oh man, we've been so stupid. Here we have, all the hard work isn't the syntax. The hard work is like the engine, how it functions, the decisions, the edge cases, working those edge cases out. And we were watching Les grow very quickly and struggle with the fact that they were a young project and did not, there's a lot of edge cases even today that Les doesn't really cover. And it's kind of, their focus is keeping it simpler, where Sass is really focused on stability and predictability. Like, you don't file a Sass bug and then we say, oh, sorry, that's just a quirk, we're not going to fix it. Typically we're like, oh, we'll get to that. So, at least from my perspective, it became very clear that we needed to move to a CSS-like syntax. And Nathan and Chris were definitely on the same page. And this was probably, honestly, this was the last major interaction that I had with the core project. And I was proposing that we should just call it Sass 3.0 and be like, hey, sorry, after 3.0, the syntax is different. Sass 2 or something, give it a name. Just something, kind of draw a line in the sand on something different. But I think their feeling definitely was that since it's the same engine and we don't want to alienate our community, we should kind of have two syntaxes. And I very much disliked the all caps SCSS. As people who follow me on Twitter know, I'm the it's Sass, not Sass guy. It should not be. Yeah, I
can understand that though. I mean, I think that's a crazy debate to have itself, but a lot of people do the all caps SASS because of CSS being, an acronym, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's just capital S, lowercase ASS. I mean, I'm not trying
it's
to
a word,
anything, but that's how it's spelled.
Well, it's a backronym, just to be clear. So
yeah.
There are syntactically awesome style sheets, but really that wasn't like, we weren't like, that's the most logical name. Oh, look, it spells Sass. I just thought the word Sass was funny. I thought to have like an effeminate name for technology isn't really common. Things are normally called like, Thor and Rake, Hammer.
Right.
So like, hey, let's just call it Sass. Like, why is it bad to call something like that? And I loved how, when I was first announcing it, like, people were like, you really called it Sass? Are you kidding? That's a terrible name. Which made me like it all the more.
Well, sorry to interrupt, that's no worse than what Vagrant's original name was, which was Hobo.
Oh boy, yeah, that was funny.
So SCSS kind of became this alternate syntax. It's definitely through the years, SCSS is far, 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 far more popular. And so when I've kind of been re-engaging over the last 2 years in the project, and at least with the community, the pragmatic guide to Sass and libsass, they only use the CSS-like syntax. And I don't really differentiate SCSS anymore. In my mind, SCSS is now just the extension on the file for Sass CSS, or Super CSS or something. I don't know. But yeah, like that it stands for that. The language is still Sass. I'm actually not a fan of having two syntaxes because I think it's kind of bad marketing to say, well, what is this?
Yeah, I feel like it's been like an anchor to you guys, and I don't mean like an anchor in a good way. I mean like it's dragging you down. That it was hard to get people to adopt when there was, the older way, because you talked about the different syntax and how different it looked, and people didn't want to adopt it, and they got to learn something new. The same reason, people don't want to use, or people would resist Haml versus ERB or HTML straight. Like it's it's just one more hurdle to get over. And so when we were on the show, the most recent show, 93, with Phil LaPierre from Thoughtball, we were talking, and he asked me, and I said, well, I know that Nathan has said, and from the Sass point of view, that it's going to continue to support both syntaxes, but do you know, or do you think that it would be just wise just to, you just said it basically, but, you know, is the longevity of Sass going to keep supporting these two syntaxes? And I think it comes with a tail end to that question, too, by saying that every time you have a conversation about Sass and its syntax, you have to have two conversations, and it forks in it. It makes it confusing. Like, even in the 5x5 IRC room, we got somebody in there asking questions about it, and Andrew thoroughly answered the question, but they're still asking questions because it's a confusing subject.
Yeah, I should be in that room. Yeah, I mean, so I definitely think Nathan is behind, and I believe Chris is behind the kind of naming scheme that it is just Sass. The word Sass refers primarily to, or exclusively to, the CSS compatible version, which is awesome because with that, you just point Sass at your folder of CSS files, change the extension, and it just works. You don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to go backport everything. You can use CSS libraries. It all just works.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, it's really a killer thing. So I think it's not, you can stop having two conversations as long as you feel comfortable with that. Sass is now CSS compatible. Its extension is SCSS. We try the Pragmatic Guide to Sass barely mentions the I think there's a little sidebar where they say there's an older syntax called indented Sass. You know, to find out more, go here.
Right.
That's basically, we've changed all the examples, what's on the website. So it's definitely people, you know, there's definitely, I know a lot of diehard people who love the older syntax. And because it is kind of more minimalist.
Yeah, we use it at Pure Charity. So Andrew and I both, our full-time jobs, we work together at this company called Pure Charity. And we use Sass there, and we use the indented version of Sass.
Yeah, so the Ruby version will...
Before I went to Pure Charity, I always used the SCSS version, and it took me a little bit to get used to it, but now I actually do prefer the indented version. So now it's like But, you know, it's funny because you're bringing up a problem that I think kind of plagues the... I don't know if it's every community, but especially in the Ruby community and especially in the Rails community. I think like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, people wanted to get in and get started with Rails, and it was really easy, like to get up and running. You know, like the 0 to Rails was so easy. But now there's like so many choices you have to make, and I think that when a potential developer is making these decisions on, you know, templating engine and how to do their style sheets and like how to do authentication, there's like all these choices you have to make to get started. Then you get to Sass and you're like, okay, everyone uses Sass, but which version of Sass should I use? Like more choices. And I think the 0 to, you know, Rails is a lot harder now for people. So, you know, I think that removing features or removing, you know, like if you removed the indented Sass version, you'd have a battle probably. And the good and the bad of open source is, guess what? If you removed support from Sass, then somebody would fork it and get the old version back and people would start using it. And it's like this thing that plagues the community, but choices are a good thing, but they're hard for newcomers. So I don't even know where I stand on that. But yeah. It is funny that you say about that because I was a diehard about the SCSS version on all the projects I ever did before I came to Pure Charity. Come to Pure Charity, it's all indented Sass. It was cutting teeth, and I hated it, and I had to spend time just like getting used to it again. And now everything I do on the side, I do indented Sass with. So I'm all screwed up.
No, you guys are just spreading the chaos. Thanks. Now, look, so indented Sass is fairly popular within experienced Rails programmer groups. If you look outside of Rails, which is where all the growth has been in Sass usage, it's hands down SCSS.
Yeah.
They're really not aware that anything else exists, to be honest. That's when you look at the tutorials, when you're learning it, when you're bringing it to your company, you're using PHP, but you have this Sass, you know, your framework supports an adapter. It just is SCSS to you. There's no concept.
Yeah.
So
well, it makes sense. I mean, Sass is CSS compatible when you use that version, and that alone is like the sales pitch. That makes sense why you would do that. You know,
Yeah, your zero to Sass, for lack of better terms, just to play on what you just said there, is super quick. As a matter of fact, what got me to start the Sass way with John Long and others was just that, because I was writing a tutorial because somebody was asking me how to get started with Sass, and I'm like, well, it's so easy nowadays. Like, you literally just do what's necessary to get the Ruby compiler, before libsass and others that are available, but get the Ruby compiler to your local machine, and pretty much from there, it's just renaming your file from CSS to SCSS. Like, that was easy, wasn't it? Like, now go rinse and repeat in your project and just start adding variables and incrementally just sprinkling, sassy CSS, to use your word, Hampton, in there, and boom. I mean, you're incrementally just stepping into this unknown world you never knew was there, and that's the magic sauce right there.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's definitely when you see, like, I mean, it's really fun to teach Sass, I think, because I mean, it's in Pragmatic Guide to Sass, and also the stuff we're doing with Treehouse. It is very much the first lessons, like, okay, so this, you show some CSS. This is also Sass. You've now learned step one. And then, you say, try indenting, try to put a sub-selector. And then, I think you're like, now you've done magic. Like,
right.
Yeah.
This is like, and then,
you can do a variable, and it's
yeah,
like,
and then
just
they're just
blows
like,
people's mind.
yeah, people are just like
doing CSS, but haven't seen it before.
Yeah, they have a little aneurysm. They're like, wait, what? Oh, what? I don't know what just happened. You can do that now?
Can you talk a bit about what you're doing with Treehouse, just to kind of give that a little light?
Yeah, so I mean, Michael and I are both working with Treehouse to we're currently working on the scripts, but we're going to be doing a whole module. Treehouse, if people don't know, is the training company that basically you log in and they have videos and tutorials to help beginners learn different web technologies. And so Sass is going to be one of the featured web technologies and have a whole unit, and they've asked me to come and do the videos and teach it.
So you're going to go there and record and be the person teaching?
I am going to be the person teaching.
Wow, that's awesome.
I got a friend that's working on there. I'll have to hook you two up when you go.
Yeah, it was all the guys at LessConf. There was a bunch of the Treehouse guys, and I know Andrew Chalky's been a friend of mine for a long time, and they were just like, "Hey, wait, you should come do it," and I was like, "Let's do it. I'm not busy."
Was it your masquerade on the beach that got them to think that way, or what?
We don't talk about that. What happens at LessConf stays at LessConf. That's the magic rule.
Good one, touche.
So yeah, that's it. I don't have anything else.
Let's ask Hampton our famous questions, Andrew.
Yeah, so I guess the first one, and the listeners to the show will know this, but any newcomers, we kind of have two questions that we ask to all of our guests, and the first one is who is your programming hero?
I'd say Tender Love.
He's a alumni of the Changelog.
Oh, really?
For those that don't know, Tenderlove is Aaron Patterson, a well-known Rubyist out there and a funny guy on Twitter.
Yes, he is. There's not only like his project Nokogiri was a major inspiration to the crazy stuff we're doing in Moovweb now, and his code is beautiful, and he's just the sweetest guy in real life, just the most down-to-earth, nice guy out there, and he has and his surrealist sense of humor, and pictures of Gorby Puff, his cat, just complete the whole thing for me. And I love when I see him at a conference, and he's usually sitting down and actually just coding the whole time. I like to think of myself as a pretty passionate programmer, but man, like, I'm just like, hey, when's lunch break? Like, oh, maybe talk to some people. I'll check Twitter. Like, he's just sitting there, like, hacking with somebody and building something really cool and amazing. And I just, so much respect. And then plus having the kind of weird surrealist sense of humor. And I do have back on my laptop, I have a Gorby Puff sticker of his crazy looking cat. So he's winking.
Awesome, yeah. I think he's if a lot of people try and get creative, when they answer that question, and they'll come up with some obscure Unix developer from the 70s, and
Yeah.
But I think if a lot of people that have been in the Ruby community were honest, he would be on that list for a lot of people. He's an inspiration to me. I mean, yeah, big fan of his. So,
Yeah. Before we go on, I just want to mention, those listening, if you want to pick up another episode of the Changelog to go back and listen to, if you go to 5by5.tv/changelog/44, you'll pick up the episode where we talk. I think it was me and Win that talked. No, it was just Win on that show. Talked Ruby 1.9, so this is pre 2.0, obviously. Talked Ruby 1.9, Nokogiri, and Tender Love Making with Aaron Patterson. So go back and listen to that show.
Which is his website, tenderlovemaking.com, I think, right?
Can I throw in another answer, too?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's really weird.
Yeah, go for it.
No, because one dawned on me. Brad Fitzpatrick, I don't know, he invented Memcache, and he works on Go now. Yeah. And we use Go a ton and really love that language. I just think that's really amazing to be on such two projects that I use all the time. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, I think I saw his name. I think he was associated with OpenID at one time, or he started it. I don't remember, but I used to use OpenID to log into, I want to say Stack Overflow.
Yeah, I believe
he's seen his name on that.
Yeah, he started OpenID, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So our other question, and this is for you to pick, Hampton, the different libraries that you're working on. We kind of asked for a call to arms. So being that we do support open source and we love open source, what would you like to see the community get involved with on any of your many projects that are out there?
Okay, so definitely hcatlin/sassc, or libsass, I believe is the name of it. Both those need help, and normal people have the ability to help on them. If you're crazy into compilers, then you can try to dive into the libsass stuff, but it's a little intense. It's kind of hard to just jump into. But SassC, especially the test framework area, needs a lot of help. I mean, that's the thing where the community, if you're really passionate about Sass and want to see Sass go from even just being a Ruby implementation to not just being a C implementation, but being other things, really being a language, we really need to have a compelling spec that kind of works for all implementations and can really help people and help solve projects that work with it. So that's, if I had a wish, it'd be people to go in there and help write tests. The tests are simple right now. We don't have options yet. We don't support some of the different compile methods, and it's not its own project. And I just absolutely love to have somebody come in and pitch in and help with that. It's not always the sexiest thing in the world to work with a spec library, but it would make a huge difference to the overall community and the health of Sass itself.
Yeah, I think you can make it the sexiest thing in the world by offering free iPads. That's what I do at Pure Charity to get my code reviewed.
That's what he does, too. He's like, hey, there's a pull request with a free iPad attached.
I mean, no one ever gets free iPads, but it seems to give them a shot.
I like this one test you have in the SassC library, huge.scss. That's kind of cool.
Well, that's our speed test. So we have a couple of ones we use for benchmarks.
Yeah.
Because definitely it's the a really simple file is, I mean, especially Ruby boot time is when you're doing performance differences. But, I mean, I don't know about you guys, how large your project is, but there's a lot of people with very, very large Sass projects. And, Ruby is not so great with handling, 100 million strings in memory all at once and then trying to write that out to disk. And that's why you see really slow performance with Ruby Sass in big projects. So, and libsass, it's super fast.
Yeah, I guess one question on talking about the testing piece. It never really occurred to me that these tests would be written in Sass. I guess that kind of just makes sense. But for those who are uber Sass enthusiasts that write Compass extensions and are frameworking to the nth degree, what would you recommend for them to dig into in some of these projects just to learn from some of the code you've written or you guys have written?
That's a tough question. I mean, definitely, Compass is a crazy invention itself and has, nice components that you can go look into. Libsass is pretty challenging to look at, and the main Sass repo itself, it's very, mature optimized code is typically ugly code, to be honest. Sorry, Nathan, it's not like ugly, but there's just a lot of stuff you do to, optimize and get around things. It's not this kind of pure, perfect, ideal. It's not the kind of thing you do like a training on, and this is how your code should look. I don't know, when people want to learn what to work on. I mean, honestly, like, share your Sass code. Go look at some of the crazy mix-ins that people write. There's a ton of stuff on CodePen. I love to see that stuff floating by. I'll randomly see a tweet of like, oh, look at what I built in CodePen. Was that the question?
Yeah, that's good. I definitely think Compass is a super good resource, especially if you're working with Compass. You already know about that, but definitely diving into the source code. So like, if people want to know how do I write my own mix-ins that do X, Y, Z, they're going to go jump into Compass or Bourbon or something like that, or if they want to drop down into Ruby and write some sort of Ruby extension that does something in addition to on top of Sass or whatever, then they can do those things. But it hadn't really occurred to me that your tests will be written in Sass. So I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And like looking at some of your variables in there, I just didn't really think about them being written in Sass. Don't ask me why.
What would you write them in?
I don't know. That's what I just don't even know. I haven't done this kind of work, like writing tests against this. I don't know. I just didn't think it would be written in Sass.
Well, so Tritium, which is my newer language, that's imagine it's like Nokogiri kind of, but a language, or a really stripped down JavaScript, and its test framework that I wrote is giant, because it's basically input HTML, the Tritium that you want to change on it, and then what we expect to come out of that, and every single build that we do internally at the company, goes and kicks off I think it's near 2,000 tests at this point. Anytime that we get a bug, you go prove it out in one of those snippets. And so that's basically what we're trying to do here. It's very early version though right now. It's very simple. Primarily what we're running though is we run the Ruby Sass and then we run Sass C and run them right next to each other and make sure they match for ones that don't have expected output.
Awesome. Well, Hampton, I want to thank you for joining us today. It was definitely a fun chat, talking with you about Sass, Haml, Wikipedia Mobile, Moovweb, and all the crazy stuff you guys are doing there. Definitely appreciate your inventor hat, and hope you keep wearing that hat and don't stop inventing. I'm sure that you won't, but
I can't help it. Stop me, somebody.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you want to follow him, you can follow him on Twitter. He's H Catlin, both there as well as GitHub. This is episode number 94. Show notes, and this show will be available tomorrow at 5by5.tv/changelog/94. Next week, Andrew, we don't have anybody lined up for next week, do we?
We have some pending things.
Some pending. So guests for next week has not been pinned down, but nonetheless, next Tuesday at 5 we'll be broadcasting live again. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.